an age of austerity, an economy on its knees, GPs struggling to cope with gigantic changes against a backdrop of limited resources. I could be talking about today, but I'm not. It's the early years of the NHS, and in that turmoil, the idea of a college for general practitioners was born. The college officially marks its 60th anniversary in November next month. The parallels between then and now are striking. The challenges faced by the founders of our college were every bit as great as those that we face today. And it's heartening to be reminded that when needed, our profession rose to those challenges by creating an academic body with lofty ambitions to support and improve standards of clinical practice, education, and research. It's been a busy year for GPs and for the NHS. At the last AGM, I talked about the year of being one of triumph and turmoil. And as I move towards my final 12 months of being your chair, I can say again, another year of triumph and turmoil. One of the triumphs of this year has seen us moving closer to getting extension of GP training, something that was first mooted in 1962, so no rush then. 3-year compulsory vocational training was introduced in 1983, the year I qualified. Since then, the NHS has changed beyond recognition, and so too has what is expected from a general practitioner, who is as likely to induct a patient onto insulin or start methadone maintenance as our forefathers were to prescribe penicillin. Yet, despite the enormous changes, the length of our training has stayed the same. Final approval by Medical Education England last month, and in principle agreement by our partners in Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales, means we're over the final hurdle. Still a way to go, but we're now on the last straight. Enhanced training is our gift to the next generation of GPs. It will equip them to rise to the challenges of 21st century healthcare. Next month, our college moves to its fantastic new headquarters at 30 Euston Square. And for this, we have to thank our brilliant honorary treasurer, Colin Hunter, aka James Bond. Where are you? So there's much to celebrate and be proud of at our conference this week. At last year's conference, we were in turmoil as well. In England, we were in the midst of the Health and Social Care Bill. And despite assurances to the contrary, the NHS is experiencing the mother of all top-down reorganisations. In fact, the most radical in its 60-year history. A bill qualified by 1,000 amendments, longer than a Tolstoy novel, rushed through at breakneck speed. And as a result, our NHS is in distress, and so too are many of us. Of course, the health bill applies only to England, but all our health services across the UK are under pressure. Pressure to find ways of delivering services more efficiently without compromising the quality of patient care. Regrettably, our fight against the health bill wasn't enough to prevent it getting passed into law. But we did succeed in getting our voices heard, loud and clear. We were the first medical body to publicly oppose the White Paper. We constantly championed the values of our NHS. Remember our pride at seeing the NHS featured centre stage in the Olympic opening ceremony? I cried. I'm sure many of you did as well. To have our great, fair, universal healthcare system recognised in a global celebration like that was profoundly moving. A welcome change from the constant diet of blame and criticism. It's a health service that was established at a time when our balance of payments were far worse than they are today. A time when our economy was at its knees. The NHS is a national treasure, and national treasures should be protected. We GPs will always make the system work for our patients. We will never compromise the founding values of the NHS. And each of us in this room must continue to play our part in raising concerns wherever we see inequalities and unfairness in our health system. We will show courage, just as our forefathers did, as they rose to the extraordinary challenges posed by post-war austerity and the uncertainties of the new NHS. In this 60th year, our anniversary year, I want to pay homage to 3 people who have made an outstanding contribution to our patients, our college, and our profession. On our college's website, there's a section about our heritage, written in 2003 by John Horder, and it ends with this sentence: "It's easy to forget that today's actions are invariably influenced by the past, and that we are always travelling on the shoulders of giants." How true and how apt, because the first giant I want to talk about is John Horder himself. John's metaphor serves to remind us that our work today is dependent on the work and achievements of those who have gone before us. He said, "The past still matters, and wheels are less likely to be reinvented if the past is remembered or recorded." He reminded us that though the present brings continual change, the basic elements of what it means to be a GP remain the same. A doctor who listens, a doctor who cares, and a doctor who knows what to do. John died this year at the age of 92, and he was a great leader of our profession from its very beginning. He was our president from 1979 to 1982, and remarkably, he never missed an AGM in 59 years. My office at Princes Gate was called the John Horder Room. He was a gifted artist, and the walls were covered in beautiful watercolours. And John used to make unannounced visits to make sure I wasn't damaging his paintings. I'm not sure I know what he thought I was going to do with them. As a young GP in the 1950s, John saw a need for the development of medical generalism at a time of increasing specialisation. And he wanted to see general practice given the same status as other medical disciplines. John wrote that general practitioners needed heroes in their profession to inspire them and to give them a sense of pride in their vocation. And 60 years later, he is one of those heroes himself. John has been called the father of modern general practice, and his contribution to our profession and our college is immeasurable. My second giant, and I mean that literally as well as metaphorically, because he's a very tall man and I am very short, is someone I had the great good fortune of being trained by in the 1990s, David Morrell, who died this February. He was a distinguished academic GP and also a kind and decent man who lived by his Christian values, looking after people inside as well as outside the consulting room. In 1982, he was awarded a papal knighthood for his contribution to the sick and disabled. David was the first GP from an academic department of general practice to become president of the BMA. And when he took up post in 1984, he challenged the BMA to lead the medical profession out of the mire of marketplace medicine to the high ground of professional medical care. So you can see why he's one of my heroes. David was a great believer in strengthening the links between primary and secondary care, and he made a huge contribution to our profession in so many ways, too many to mention here. But I'd like to read a few words from his inaugural lecture. He said, "Dinosaurs of general practice like myself may look back through rose-tinted spectacles, but at least we can say we enjoyed our work. It was fun. And when we retired, many of our patients said they were sorry to see us go. We must put the fun back into medicine because it is an enormously satisfying profession. So let's take David's advice and make sure we have fun this week." My final hero is our dear old Iona Heath, not quite so old. She'll hate me for that. Not an obituary, of course, in her case. There she is, because she's here today, alive and kicking. She's stepping down next month after a generation of service to general practice and the college. She inspired me, as she's done many in this room. Generations of us have been moved by her writings, her speeches, her honesty and her values. So many examples we can draw on. Her international work to promote family medicine across the world, or her prestigious Harveyan lecture last year, which was one of my highlights. And giving that lecture was an honour not just for Iona, but for the whole of general practice, as it was only the second time in 400 years that the Royal College of Physicians had asked a GP to give that named lecture. Iona shouldn't be allowed to retire. Not for long anyway. I do think it's important that we give her a few days rest to recover from a lifetime of hard work. And then, even if we have to parachute her back and chain her to the railings of the new building, we want her back. The work of these heroes spans a lifetime of our profession. From its modest beginnings to what we have now, a vibrant profession, the cornerstone of the NHS. It's easy, though, to see GPs of yesteryear through rose-tinted spectacles. But like us, they faced great challenges in their time, some of which it's hard for us to imagine today. But GPs thrive on challenge, which is just as well, because we've got a fair of it about at the moment. I've talked about just 3 heroes, but there are, of course, many, many more, many of them in this room. Our profession has no shortage of them in this country and around the world. This year I travelled to Vienna to attend Wonka. And what inspired me most were the stories from delegates all over the world, doing their utmost to keep things going in troubled times. Whether it was the Greek GPs doing their best to care for their patients as their economy crumbled around them, or the Spanish revelling in winning the European Cup, remember that? Keeping their spirits up through the financial crisis. I met GPs from Turkey and Portugal, distressed by the parlous state of their economies and the impact this was having in their ability to deliver excellent primary care. And we also think of our brave colleagues around the world risking their lives to care for patients. It seems to me that challenge is what attracts people to our wonderful profession. And part of that challenge is the breadth of our specialism, our generalism. Earlier this year, I was in South Africa, visiting a hospital in Cape Town. I was introduced to the GP medical director, who showed me round this publicly funded hospital. He told me, GPs do everything, including simple amputations. Simple amputations, I said, as a patient wheeled by as if on cue. Yes, the medical director said, and all the difficult caesareans and all the high births, in fact, most of the operations, and GPs do all the anaesthesia too. Then he told me, but we have some of yours here, you know. Some of mine, I said. Some GPs you've trained, RCGP, and we can always tell when we have one of yours, because they're certainly not taught to do below-knee amputations. That's true, he said, but they shine out. They know how to manage chronic disease, and we have a lot of that now. Our GPs are rising to challenges across the globe, adapting to changing conditions, responding to need, and making the world a better place. John Horder understood that the past still matters. Ignorance of the past condemns us to repeat it, but recording it and remembering it sets us free and allows us to grow. The giants of the past have made it possible for us to embrace our future with optimism and confidence. And from the vantage point of their broad shoulders, we find ourselves in a position to see further and more clearly into the future. Our college has been around for 60 years, and it will be here in 60 years' time. And I'm confident that you, the GPs of today and of tomorrow, will leave giant footsteps yourself that will guide future generations. Thank you.